Hi, I'm Terrence Howard. I want to tell you about a very special place and a very special person. A man named Jerry Powell, and the place is called Rhythmia Life Advancement Center. I initially went down there thinking that, okay, this will make a nice little vacation. I didn't expect to get much out of it. And the miracle that they were talking about, I thought that that would never happen, especially with me. But I got something so much more than a miracle. I got my life back. I got me back. I got my joy back.
Out of all the clients I've worked with, Jerry was, in my opinion, hopeless.
In 10 plus years, I have never seen anyone drink as much as Jerry Powell.
You kind of, were fearful around him.
To walk into accounting, to find him with a calculator, and I'm not talking about a little desktop, I'm talking about electric, plug in the wall, big, heavy duty calculator, and he threw it across the room and just missed the accountant's head.
I became an asshole beyond compare. I was a stone cold drunk. I was a drug addict. I loved cocaine. I was using injectable Demerol, five sticks a day. I was a sex addict. I was just about everything, but more than that, I had an energy that was terrible. I could walk into a CVS and piss people off. I was a mess of a human, and I had the gift of getting this miracle.
Jerry came back to Malibu, and I immediately met Jerry at his house because I wanted to see if this was, the real deal. And when I walked up to him, he was on his deck at his house by his pool, and he just had this different vibe.
His whole nature was different. Even the look in his eyes, you could see it was a different person.
I never realized what a dark cloud seemed to always be enshrouding him, and it wasn't until that cloud was gone that I was actually able to see the real light that, is Jerry.
I was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is a collapsed coal town. And I was born in a family that was Irish, Italian, Catholic, to a father who was quite violent. It was a fairly tough environment. I wasn't at all good at school. I was always in fist fights, and I ended up getting kicked out of one school and put into another school. And within a few short years, I found myself in jail. Fortunately, I went to a jail that everybody who was in there wasn't guilty. I was the only guilty person in my jail. As each of these trials came up, a strange thing kept happening. I had a public defender, and I kept getting acquitted. And I got acquitted of 6 of them, and in the 7th one, I said, if I ever get acquitted, I'm going to do something with my life. And I got acquitted. And they were all on technicalities. And that was the first time that I looked at my life and I said, God gave me some kind of a break. So I said, I'm going to do something with my life. But as a result of the way that I was raised, I didn't know a lot about doing things for other people or a life of service or any of that. I just knew that if you were successful, you made money, and if you weren't successful, you didn't make money. And so I set out to become a successful person. In my 30s, I took a company public and had a net worth of about $140 million. In the dot-com crash, that company crashed as well, and I found myself broke again. And at 38, I started another company that I sold by the time I was 42 for $89 million. During that time, which is a stretch of about 20 years, a lot of things happened in my life. I got married, I had 2 children. One of the events in my life that really made me question the sanity or my own ethics, or that was that through my son, and both of my sons were in Catholic school at the time, and a woman enrolled her children in Catholic school in my son's grade. She was married and I was married. And our kids got along great and played together and all these things. And the next thing you know, her and I were in an affair. And then I remember this one night where we were back in Pennsylvania, close to my own home, and we went to a bar and we got drunk and we got a hotel room, and my wife and her husband were tracking us down, and they found us. They were together looking for us, and they found us in a hotel room, and she told her husband the truth, and I told my wife the truth eventually, and 6 months later, her husband killed himself. And to me, that was one of the worst days of my life.
You'd see some explosions that were pretty intense. I mean, I've seen things where it's like, wow, this guy is not some guy I would mess with.
My life was spiraling out of control.
He was upset, he was crying, he was angry. He had all these emotions going at the same time. It was a bit overwhelming, to tell you the truth.
And at the same time, I would look and I would say, you know, here I'm getting these things that the world is telling me should make me so happy. I had at one time I had 26 cars, 2 airplanes, 6 beautiful houses, mansions, and I'd be wondering, why am I not happy? Every time I bought a new Ferrari, I'd be happy for 10 minutes or for an hour, and it got so bad that I tried to commit suicide 2 times.
His wife was filing for divorce. His kids just had it with him. They hated him. His friends had turned against him. You know, the few loyal friends that he had were just totally upset at him.
I didn't know what was wrong with me. I used to just wonder, what is wrong with me?
My involvement with Jerry over the years, it's just, I mean, I was at a loss for, I didn't even know what to do with this guy.
For the next 6 years, I got to be in therapy about 5 days a week, about 8 hours a day. I hired that doctor, Dr. Jeff McNary, when I left rehab. And during that time, I was introduced to Michael Bernard Beckwith, the Reverend at the Agape Spiritual Center in Culver City, California. And he assigned me a Reverend.
He wanted to meet with me in order to grow and develop and unfold spiritually. And he was, you know, he was an individual that obviously seemed to get what he wanted when he wanted it.
I was actually in counseling about 7 days a week, and this went on for years and years and years.
His same addictive personality was active, but now it was based on trying to figure out these universal truths and these principles.
And I could understand the concepts that they were talking about, but I didn't see myself getting any better. And it got so bad, 6 years went on, and I decided to start thinking about committing suicide again. And I said, before I commit suicide, I want to take a trip. And I took a trip to the Philippines, and a friend had saw a post that I put on Facebook, and the post had something to do with how hard my life was and how terrible I felt in life. She happened to be visiting the Philippines, and she dropped in on me. And she said to me, she said, Jerry, I know someone who was just like you. And they went to Costa Rica and they did a plant medicine. And they went for a week and they came back a week later, and he came back a changed guy, and his life was changed forever. And I thought, to me it sounds like a load of crap. And she said, you know what, Jerry, that's what I thought you'd say. And you probably wouldn't do this because it makes you uncomfortable. And I thought to myself, I'll teach her and I'll go down and I'll try this medicine.
The way plant medicine is viewed in the medical field that I'm in the psychology field that I'm working in, is that it's not accepted. It's not viewed as a viable methodology for therapy or medicinal qualities or anything. So there's not a lot of information about it.
My assistant at the time researched the place that she gave me and booked me into this place in Costa Rica. And I left the Philippines and I drank all the way to Los Angeles. He gave me some new luggage and sent me on my way to Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, it's a sea of like 5-7 people, and then I get off the plane, and behind that there's this one super tall black dude. And he said, because everybody's saying, do you want a taxi or da-da-da? And he's like, hey, Jerry, man. He's eating a Big Mac. He has a pot belly. He's eating the Big Mac. And the juices are dripping on his stomach. And I thought, oh my God, this guy's my driver. And he walked up to me and said, I'm your shaman. I'm like, oh shit, no. Little did I know that this man would end up saving my life. And I get to this place and it's so dirty and I'm drunk and I'm mad and I can't even sit down, and they show me my room and it has some kind of stained blanket and the air conditioner's going zzz, 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 zzz. I said, so this is the thing I said to the guy, I said, listen, Muganda, I said, this isn't exactly what I had in mind, you know, as far as my spiritual journey here, you know. And he's like, don't worry about it, man, don't worry about it, man. We're taking the medicine tonight. I said, dude, I've been drinking for about 60 hours. Are you sure? He goes, don't worry, take it. You just take it, man. So at 8 o'clock, they came to get me, to take me to the temple. So we get into the garage, and because that's where the temple was. There's these beds, and there's dudes laying down in the beds, and like they're in little beds, and there's buckets, and it just looked freaky. Everybody had on blindfolds. And I took the stuff, and he said, lay down, man. So we laid down. And he said, when you see something, raise your hand. So I'm thinking like, this is bullshit, this stuff doesn't work, da-da-da-da. And then I think I see a cat. I'm like, oh shit, I think I see a house cat. I just didn't say anything for a second, and then all of a sudden I saw a tiger, and I really saw a tiger. And I was like, I shot my hand up and I said, I saw something, man. And I was laying down. And so the way that this works, he'd take a chair just like this, and my head was here, my feet were here, and he'd come behind you, and he'd start tapping on your forehead. And he says, tell me when you see my finger. And I'm thinking to myself, I have a blindfold on, I can't, and as soon as that thought comes, I see his finger. And my natural reaction is to go up and to feel my face, and I have this blindfold on, it's this thick. It's like a foam blindfold. And that's the first time in my life, in that very second, that I believed in something other than what I could see, because something was taking place that was truly a mystery to me. And he keeps tapping me, and I see his finger crystal clear, so I tell him, yeah, I see your finger. And then he goes like this, and my head's down here, and he said, how many fingers do I have up? And I could see it just like I see this. I said 3. And then he said, now look at the ceiling and make it disappear. And I looked at the ceiling and I made it disappear. How, I don't know. And he said, now pick a star and jump to it. And I looked and I picked a star and I sort of went like this. And he starts yelling, fly faster, man, fly faster. And he said, now look to your left. Do you see the moon? And I thought, this guy's done this before because he knows exactly where the moon is. He said, now Jerry, fly right to it. So I flew to the moon. When I first started, the moon was only this big. And it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm flying fast and fast and fast. And all of a sudden, everything goes black. The only thing that I see is a TV screen. And on that TV screen, there was an old-fashioned cursor, like from a 1980s Radio Shack computer, and a video of the moon. And I looked hard, and I could see my feet sticking out of the moon like this. So I went head first into the moon. And when I figured out what was going on, I took my left foot and I wiggled it, and I watched on the screen my foot moving like this. I thought, this is amazing, right? You write out 10 questions and you give it to your shaman before you have this experience. I said, why am I such an asshole? And the moons typed, hi Jerry, I can't tell you unless you go get your soul first. I immediately knew how to do it. I was flying back. I flew from the moon to Malibu, California. It's about a 2-minute trip if you ever do it. I landed on my deck in Malibu and I looked inside my windows and I could see me sitting at a computer. So I opened the door, I go inside, and I just see myself and I start saying, hi, how are you, da 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 da, and this mirror image of me sitting on a computer won't even talk to me. I said, Maganda, he won't even talk to me. And he goes, beg him to talk to you, tell him you need him. So I'm like, hey Jerry, I need you. I really need you to help me, will you help me? So I said, Maganda, this guy is not cooperating at all. I don't know what to do. And he said, tap him on the shoulder. So I tap him on the shoulder and this other me looks at me and says, you know, I wouldn't help you if you were the last person on earth. And I was like, why? And he said, because all you've done is lied to me. You're full of shit. You break every promise you ever make. You're not a good guy, and you don't care about anybody but yourself. And so McGinnis says, what is he saying? And I said, well, he said that I'm full of shit, that I don't care about anything about myself, and I explained to him what he said. And McGinnis says, beg him to help you. So I said, hey, me, I understand what you think of me, and it's probably true, but I'm really in a bad position and I need your help. And so the other me, the me which I later find out is my soul, turns around to me and says, I'll help you, but it has to be with certain conditions. For the rest of your life, if I help you, you have to take me wherever you go with you. And that every time that we have to make a decision, you have to run it by me. And if we're in conflict, you have to go with what I say. You either have to do it this way or I'm not coming with you, I'm not helping you. So I said, okay, I'll do it. And I agreed with him and I shook his hand. And then he put his other hand in my hand and he walked to the deck of my house in California. And by the time we got to the deck, he was no longer my age, but he was a 3-year-old little boy. And he jumped off the deck and held my hand and he flew me and we landed on the street in front of a house that I haven't seen in 40-some years. It was my grandfather's house. We come up to the stoop and I could see there's a dusting of snow on the stoop, and then the door opens and I can see my grandmother's floors. I haven't seen them in, again, 40-some years. I'm looking at the floor and there was, as a kid, I knocked over cranberry juice or grape juice and it hit the wall, and that stain was on the wall. This is how perfect detail. And then next thing you know, the kid opened the door and went like this to me, like, go look at it. And my grandfather was sexually molesting me, and I was 3. All of a sudden, my father appears right next to me, and now here's a guy who's been dead for 6 years, and I didn't even say, hi, how you doing, or anything like that. He's just there, and I say, Dad, that's not true, is it? And I pointed to what was going on. And my father looked at me, and he said, don't think you're so special. The guy, the shaman, goes, hey, go to the moon. So I went to the moon, back to the moon, and I said, Mrs. Moon, what can you do for me? And she said, open your chest. And I went like this, and my heart was in there. And the moon took my heart out and washed it. And I said, what? The shaman saying, what is she doing? I said, she's washing it like this, like, because she has hands, right? Crazy, but truth. She's washing it. And I said, what should I do with it, to the shaman? He said, have her put it in your left hand. I said, Mrs. Moon, would you put it in my left hand? And she put it in my left hand. And he goes, I said, what do you want me to do with it? He goes, put it in your chest. And I went to put it in my chest, and it got here, and it was black again. So it only stayed pink for 5 seconds. And I said, I'm not putting this thing in me because it's shit. You know, it's terrible. And he said, ask her for a new one. So I said, Mrs. Moon, could I please have a new heart? You know, and she said, yeah. And then she gave me this new heart. And then I said, what do you want me to do with it? She said, put it in your left hand, put it in your chest. And then the next day, I was a different guy.
I picked him up from the airport the very first time he came back. And, you know, going to the airport was like always an ordeal. Like, I had to make sure the car was clean and there wasn't a spot on it and nothing was out of place and everything was like exactly perfect. And then when I get to the airport, like, he'd tell me, hey, I'm coming out of the baggage claim, and I'd have to be right there pulling up, you know, right when he got there. And I remember, you know, getting to the airport and, you know, it was one of those days where I couldn't get the car washed and I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna freak out on me. I remember pulling up and his whole nature was different.
As soon as he walked through the door, I can like visibly see a difference, let alone when I was actually talking with him. I was like shocked, you know? I was like, well, I gotta give this thing a whirl. If it could turn him around 180, what could it do to me?
You and I have been working for 5 years almost daily, and you and I have been, you know, going through a lot together as a therapist client, and we've done every single possible strategy, whether it's spiritual counseling and, you know, yoga or surfing and talk therapy and marriage counseling and family counseling. I mean, dude, we've done everything for the last 5 years. Like, you're telling me that in one night you did some plant medicine and now you're fine?
Está yéndose al principio, donde la molécula espiritual le está estudiando ahí a ver qué tiene, algún trauma, dolor, miedo, angustia. Todo eso empieza a limpiar. Y si no tiene, pues de todas formas la medicina ayuda, digamos, a fortalecer, tener más vida y todo, digamos.
The moon told me, and this sounds so ridiculously crazy, but told me to go buy a center and to make it a plant-based center. Told me what building to buy, told me what to pay for it. Right now, I'm in love with life. And not that life is perfect every day. You know, I have challenges with health issues within my own family and the same kind of things that everybody's had and that I had before, except that every day of this life is so rich to me. To feel every piece of it, to feel the good and the bad and the happy and the sad, and it sounds crazy, but it's so rich. I'm super in love, and when I tell you that I'm super in love, you know, I go back in my life and I question as to whether I was ever in love with anything, because I was devoid of certain feelings that other people seemed like they possessed. And for me, I feel like a kid because I'm in love with somebody who's really unique and special. And I really am participating in it. This is something that's truly based on love. And it's the first time in my life I've ever had anything like that.
Siento la fuerza de la Pachamama dentro de mi corazón. Ahí decías y me susurrabas un canto libre al cielo. Miro al cielo y veo tu mirada, refleja todo mi ser. Eres origen de toda
There was my life before that day, the day of the medicine, and my life after. And they don't even look like the same things. Even in my business is exciting as anything. I have the most exciting business in the world. I get to see other people experience this. And there is nothing, there is no paycheck, there is nothing like this in the world. To see somebody else get this, it's the most amazing feeling.
Hoy con toda mi alma te vengo a agradecer. Háblame, Cochabamba sagrada. Hoy con toda mi alma te vengo a agradecer, agradecer. De la Pachamama dentro de mi corazón. Ahí decías y me susurrabas un canto libre al cielo. Siento la fuerza de la Pachamama dentro de mi corazón. Ahí decías y me susurrabas un canto libre al cielo. Siento la fuerza de la Pachamama dentro de mi corazón. Ahí decías y me susurrabas un canto libre al cielo, canto libre al cielo, canto libre al cielo.